On to the next one. Congress is already working out details of phase 4 in the economic aid package for the coronavirus. I'm Joe Khalil here in Washington. What Democratic leaders and the president say they want as part of that deal.
I'm Trevor Shirley in Washington, where experts are weighing in on what you need to do to protect your credit score during the pandemic. That story coming up.
The U.S. Census Bureau continues counting despite the coronavirus outbreak. I'm Kelly Meyer reporting from Washington, how you can fill it out right at home.
I'm Morgan Wright in Washington. Coming up, what small businesses can expect to see financially from the latest coronavirus economic relief package signed by President Trump.
Many teachers and students throughout the country struggle with the education process in the middle of the coronavirus pandemic. I'm Basil Drum reporting in Washington what lawmakers and organizations want to see changed.
I'm Alexandra Limon in Washington. Coming up, I'll tell you about the steps the government is taking to ensure there's enough food in grocery stores despite the pandemic.
As the coronavirus pandemic continues to surge, hospitals are running out of beds, but new temporary federal rules allow states to get creative. I'm Jessie Chenor in Washington, and all that story coming up.
Speaker Nancy Pelosi says the next coronavirus bill will focus on modernizing America's infrastructure.
We're very, very pleased with the aspects that we put forth today.
Pelosi says phase 4 should fund improvements to broadband internet, access to clean water, health centers, and America's bridges and roads.
We couldn't get everything we wanted in the other bill. Let's begin to go down this path.
The president says he wants to avoid some of the speaker's Green New Deal spending, but he's on board with a big infrastructure bill.
And I'm suggesting $2 trillion. We redo our roads, our highways, our bridges. We fix up our tunnels.
And while some Republicans are hesitant about the price tag, not so President Trump.
Wouldn't this be a great time to borrow money at zero interest rate and really build our infrastructure like we can do it?
Many California lawmakers say they already have their eyes on specific infrastructure projects, and they support using phase 4 dollars to get them done.
Look, I welcome the president talking about wanting to do infrastructure.
Congressman Eric Swalwell says he'd recommend funding for road and rail projects to better connect northern and central California.
We're trying to work on that project and dollars for that to put people to work to come out of this economy.
With Congress out of session and sheltering in place like the rest of us, Speaker Pelosi says it'll likely be mid-April before Congress can begin serious face-to-face negotiations. In Washington, I'm Joe Khalil.
Maryland Senator Ben Cardin says help is on the way for small businesses hard hit by the pandemic.
We're trying to keep people employed.
The president's signature on the $2 trillion economic relief package makes available $350 billion for small businesses.
There are loans available that are forgiven, that pay up to 8 weeks of payroll and additional expenses.
That loan forgiveness comes with a simple step.
And there are not conditions attached other than maintain your workforce.
Meaning just keep paying them during this crisis. We can make loans become grants, meaning they don't have to pay them back.
New York Senator Kirsten Gillibrand says she recognizes that non-essential businesses across the nation have been forced to close, but keeping employees on payroll will help the economy recover.
If they're willing to just go the extra mile to keep those employees paid, they can get the money they need to stay open.
Lawmakers say the goal for businesses is to stay ready to bounce back as quickly as possible. Steve Bolger with the Small Business Administration says the money will be sent soon.
The Paycheck Protection Program will open on Friday.
Bolger says businesses should reach out to their banks now.
The bank will make a calculation of how much they're entitled to for the loan. They'll immediately get the money.
Bolger says if the loans are used correctly, the business will be off the hook and the SBA will pay the bank back. Reporting in Washington, I'm Morgan Wright.
There's a lot packed into the $2 trillion coronavirus relief package, but no protections to insulate your credit score.
I pushed for that until 30 minutes before the agreement was signed.
Ohio Senator Sherrod Brown said consumers, especially those now out of work, needed that kind of protection.
We had interest from the Republican chairman, but Senator McConnell and President Trump said no.
But financial experts say you can still help yourself, first by finding out your current credit score.
I recommend people go to annualcreditreport.com just to see what's on there. That's the free resource to get your credit report.
Financial expert Pete Dunn says if you're out of work or making less, you should still try to make at least minimum monthly payments.
As opposed to trying to get out of debt. Trying to get out of debt is not the focus right now.
He also says it never hurts to call your creditors.
Communicate with them, be honest with them. You're not telling them a story, you're just communicating. And that helps because they can mark it in your file. And if there is grace to be extended, by all means, you'll be in line for that.
Even though the relief package won't protect your credit score, other federal policy changes can help.
You know, if you've got federal student loan payments, you're going to be able to defer those. If you have an FHA loan, you're going to be able to put that into forbearance.
Reporting in Washington, I'm Trevor Shirley.
School teachers and students continue to move classes online during the coronavirus crisis, but it's not easy.
In some cases, children live in a location where there is no access to internet. They could not have it in their home if their parents or families were so inclined.
Virginia Representative Abigail Spanberger says teachers have run into their own issues, and Virginia Representative Don Beyer agrees.
It's one thing to have kids in the classroom. It's another thing to essentially individualize lesson plans for every one of the 30 children that you're responsible for.
The National Education Association says 10 to 25% of students in a community do not have access to tools like broadband and the basic computer technology they need to learn.
Our students have very different experiences with access and opportunity depending on their zip code.
National Education Association Vice President Lily Garcia says teachers and students across the country are adjusting, but they need more support. Pennsylvania Congressman Glenn Thompson says the $2 trillion coronavirus relief law was a step in the right direction.
As a part of the CARES package, we did include a significant, a large amount of money actually for continued investment in connectivity.
But teachers and students argue they need even more help to keep kids in class while they're stuck at home. Reporting in Washington, I'm Basil John.
Vice President Mike Pence toured a Walmart distribution center in Virginia and offered words of encouragement to workers.
Thank you for doing a great job, for keeping food on the table for the American people.
The vice president wants to reassure Americans that empty grocery store shelves will be restocked.
We're grateful to our farmers.
North Dakota Senator Kevin Kramer says the foundation of our food supply is reliable.
That produces more than enough food for the American consumer.
But there are questions about the link between the farmers and the distributors, and that's the farm workers who pick the crops.
Even before the coronavirus pandemic, there was an ongoing farm worker shortage, and crops were literally rotting in the fields. Many farm workers are immigrants on temporary work visas. Others are undocumented, and the Trump administration's immigration policies created a shortage of workers.
And they created a lot of fear.
Lawmakers have been working on legislation to increase the number of legal migrant workers. But California Congressman Salud Carbajal says now farm workers are worried about the coronavirus too. So he's introduced a new bill.
To make sure that we are doing everything possible to provide the personal protective equipment and the support that these workers need.
The State Department also announced it will increase the number of farm workers' temporary visas to help keep the food flowing to your local grocery stores. In Washington, Alexandra Limon.
Senator Bill Cassidy is watching his home state of Louisiana turn into a hotspot for the coronavirus pandemic.
About 3 weeks ago, we had one case in Louisiana, and now we have probably 4,500 cases.
with a few hundred people dead.
As cases rise rapidly, hospitals are hitting maximum capacity. But new temporary rules from the Trump administration will help free up beds.
To use the resources that they already have in their community.
Coronavirus Task Force member Seema Verma says overwhelmed hospitals will be able to transfer patients not suffering from the virus to facilities like outpatient surgery centers. Cassidy, a physician himself, says the centers also have a key resource his state and others desperately need.
Some of these outpatient hospitals will have ventilators or anesthesia machines which can function as a ventilator.
But members of Congress say these temporary federal rules also highlight another issue, a shortage of ICU nurses.
We can build more ICU beds, but staffing them is a challenge.
Fellow Louisiana Senator John Kennedy says more states will have to look at loosening licensing requirements and asking former ICU nurses to come out of retirement. Arkansas Congressman French Hill says states may also shorten training programs.
We've talked about the new medical graduates that are not yet licensed, pressing them into service here this spring.
Changes like these expected to boost capacity and save lives as the country waits for the virus to peak. In Washington, I'm Jessie Tenor.
This census is different from previous censuses.
U.S. Census Bureau Director Dr. Stephen Dillingham says, just like the rest of us, the Census Bureau is making changes because of the coronavirus.
We have already adjusted our schedule, and we're continuing to focus on self-reporting in the months of April and May.
April 1st is officially Census Day, and the Census Bureau is asking us to respond today to the census while social distancing, filling out the census forms online, by phone, and by mail. So I went to 2020census.gov to fill out my own questionnaire. 5 minutes later, I was done, and all from my home.
Maybe the fact that more people are spending time at home, they will fill out these forms in so we can get them in so we make sure we have an accurate census.
Republican Florida Senator Rick Scott stressed the importance of the count not only to the Sunshine State, but the entire country. The census determines your state's congressional representation and affects the amount of federal funding that will reach you and your neighbors. Democratic Congressman Joe Cunningham says the pandemic helps highlight the importance of the U.S. Census.
How we split up our federal resources by states, by municipalities, all that stuff goes back to the census and who's living where.
Despite the outbreak, the U.S. Census Bureau insists it is on track to finish the count by December. Reporting in Washington, I'm Kelly Meyer.